Ministerio TIC.
Para mí un verdadero placer y además una emoción muy grande compartir este panel. El panel de hoy, la conversación que nos trae aquí el día de hoy tiene que ver con datos. Y yo creo que los datos hoy en día, pues como todos sabemos, son supremamente importantes para todo tipo de oficios y para todo tipo de negocios, pero en particular para la música, para los artistas. Entonces, hemos traído aquí a dos figuras bien interesantes de ese sector. Andreas Katsambas.
That's right.
Y tenemos a Oscar Areliz, quienes van a estar acompañándonos hoy, entendiendo los datos. Se llama esta conversación A Real Edge to Understanding Data. Y vamos a mirar a la industria de la música en Colombia, que creo que todos tenemos también claro que si bien los datos proporcionan y brindan muchísima claridad sobre el camino a seguir en esta era de datos, de grandes datos, también representan un reto muy grande con relación a transparencia, con relación a comunidades, a públicos, a monetización, etcétera, etcétera. Y si bien para territorios emergentes y en desarrollo como Colombia es muy complejo llegar a esa transparencia que necesitamos como sector dinámico de las artes y de la creatividad, pues qué mejor que tener a estos dos personajes para darnos una luz sobre lo que está sucediendo en Colombia para los artistas, dónde estamos como territorio, como comunidad, como audiencia y muchísimo más. So guys, thank you so much for being in Bogotá, Colombia. It's really great to have you here. If you would please introduce yourselves and tell us what you do and who you work for, it'd be great to get this conversation started. So let's start with you, Oscar.
Sure. My name is Oscar Areliz. Me llamo Oscar Areliz. Hablo español. Un poco pocho, pero hablo español. I work with Polestar. I'm a writer at Polestar. But obviously, Polestar is a magazine that covers the industry, but we also really rely heavily on data that we receive from venues, artists, promoters. And a lot of that data also comes from Chartmetric, actually. We actually use some of theirs for some of our charts as well. And yeah, I've been working with Pulsar for 3 years, and I feel like I'm still learning a lot, and especially learning a lot about Colombia as a market, the markets that are growing here in Bogotá, and then now Medellin. I know it's going to be a growing one with a new arena coming, so we're excited about that to see how that pans out for you guys. But yeah, so that's who I am.
Andreas, tell us a bit about yourself.
Yes, thank you. And I have to say, it's my second time at PYME, my fourth event actually, which is pretty amazing as well. And as much as we talk about music, I always enjoy coming and meeting new friends. And I made 2 new friends on stage today. It's the first time we met as well, but the great audience too. President of Chartmetric is my 4th year in this role. And we do data, music analytics for the music industry and beyond, anyone that has to do anything with music. Tons and tons of data, hence the reason we're going to have this great conversation today. But I come from the music industry, meaning I work at labels, directly with artists, managers, agents, you name it. So I do understand a lot of the challenges you guys face, a lot of the areas you want to address, a lot of the ways you want to incorporate data into what you do for yourselves if you're artists or for the artists you represent. So I'm very excited to have this session with you guys today.
Amazing. Bueno, pues primero que todo, como Polestar es una de las revistas que seguimos muchos de los periodistas musicales en el mundo para poder entender un poco cómo están funcionando los mercados desarrollados alrededor del sector de los conciertos, ¿no? Son probablemente una de las publicaciones más respetadas y autorizadas para hablar de todo lo que tiene que ver con giras, con conciertos a nivel internacional y con Chartmetric. Mi experiencia ha sido bastante grata también como periodista, ya que a través de Chartmetric he tenido la oportunidad de hacer investigaciones profundas sobre fenómenos revolucionarios como el de los corridos tumbados, de manera que let's get this show on the road and let's get this conversation going and talk about Colombia. Who wants to start? Maybe let's start with you, Andreas. There's a lot of exciting stuff about what I read. I read a little bit on the research on Colombia's music industry, and I'm very excited for you to share with us, with the Colombian audiences and with the Colombian artists, what you guys have found so far.
Very much so. I have to say, yesterday in my workshop, I did speak about a couple of these points, so if I repeat myself, apologies to you guys, but it's one of the fastest growing markets. And Chartmetric, we have 12 million artists that we kind of represent now. 31,000 are coming from Colombia, which is amazing. But some of the fastest growing artists are coming from Colombia as well, meaning yesterday, when I look into the data, there was about 30 new artists that we kind of consider superstars, growing very quickly. And I showed some examples like Ovi on the drums and Belé, having very small numbers about a year ago, and now they're like in the millions, 20 million plus in like listeners, things like that. Then we look into the markets, and in some cases, Colombia wasn't even the top market, meaning these artists are becoming global artists. It can be the US, it can be Mexico, it can be the UK in some cases, it can be Spain, which is fascinating as well. Other amazing metrics, if you take the top 4 platforms, Colombia is number 6 on YouTube, which is fascinating. Number 8 on TikTok, top 10 on Instagram, and 13 on Spotify. So for a country which is small in population, really outperforms when it comes to social media, which to me says 2 things. You guys love music, and you're very social. You really like to go online and help and support and engage with your artists in that case too. Another cool thing that came out in the research, outside of Colombia, US is the second biggest market for Colombian artists to go perform live, then the UK, then Spain, which, looking at that, you kind of think North America, Europe as well. So Colombian artists are really thinking globally, which is, to me, today's environment, the right way to go.
Right. I want to ask about the sample in the findings regarding social and platforms, because as you mentioned, we're not that big of a population in terms of density, and I don't want to get too technical, but I do have this really intriguing question about how we made it to the 6th place on YouTube, how we made it to the 9th place on Instagram, how we made it to the 13th place on Spotify, and how we did that into the 7th place on TikTok. How does that happen? And what are the other 5 territories right up there?
Okay, great question. US is number 1.
Right, okay, hands down.
Number 2 is Brazil. But it's 200 million plus population.
This is about density once again. This is about the quantity, the amount of people.
Yeah, and then it depends. TikTok is not in India, so India outperforms in the other platforms, and then Mexico is really up there too. So it's amazing to have, when you look at the Latin American continent, you have 3 markets representing the top 5. I mean, it's insane just to think of that. And someone asked me, and I said, there's 2 things I can think of outside of just looking at the data that can explain that. Music is a way of life. It's in your DNA. Why do I say that? I got in an Uber, and the driver had YouTube on their phone, and they were just, watching videos constantly, meaning music is really part of what you guys do on your day-to-day, kind of like lifestyle, which you don't see that much in the US. Why? US, they have many other distractions. It's not just music. They can play video games, or, they can do so many other things, where here, still music is really up there. Like, music represents who you are, and I've seen it when I go to live shows. I mean, a live show here, the energy is very different than North America, like the US or even in Europe. And 2, I think it's a cultural thing. The social aspect should not be ignored. And why do I say that? I do data analysis from many other countries. And sometimes I tell people, you guys have to be more engaging online. And they say, what that's not who we are. I said, well, if you want to be successful, that's part of it. You guys, it's like a no-brainer. You know, it's part of what you do as part of your culture. And I think you take the love of music, you take the fact that, you know, the social element is really there, you could put the two together, what do you expect? A huge impact and a huge growth. Another thing, many different types of music, meaning you're not just stuck into one thing. You like to discover new types of music. You do appreciate someone coming from like a small niche genre and kind of building up and coming out of nowhere and be successful. So you support more the quality than the type of music above and beyond as well. So I think that's a key aspect that I wanted to address.
Actually, I wanted to build off of what you just said, because I think that's what makes Colombia or Latin America in general just such a unique area, is the fact that you guys really elevate your artists and really support your artists and your culture, but you guys also embrace others as well. So when you look at the data when it comes to venues, obviously the reason Movistar Arena in Bogota is one of the top selling arenas in the world on our charts, it's not because you guys support only Colombian artists, you guys support international artists. That's where a lot of the money's coming. So it's not just, you know, the Karol G's or the Shakiras or the Carlos Vives, you know, like, you know, Judas Priest or whatever. All these rock stars from England, from the United States, they want to come to Bogota as well because you guys embrace them so much. So you guys have such an eclectic taste here in this country, and I think it's very telling because everyone wants to come to South America, and especially in Colombia.
Now, Andreas mentioned that when it comes to live, the largest market for Latin American artists and for Colombian artists continues to be the U.S. And I want to ask a little bit about what the audience is like in America, if the success of Colombian artists is translating into crossover audiences, or if it's just Latino consumers consuming Latino content in America when it comes to being the #1 market for Colombian artists performing live.
No, I think it's a really good question because it's a combination of a lot of things, you know, like in a way, I wrote a headline saying like what borders, but that doesn't really play very well now with this administration, but that we have right now, that politically going on in America. But you know, when it comes to the consumer, yes, a lot of it has to do with the fact that there are more Latin people, there are more Hispanic people living in the United States, because it's the children like me, people born of immigrants that now are citizens, and we dominate the population as well as the culture. But I think a lot of it also has to do with the fact that people are just consumption has changed, and a lot of that has to do with social media. People are just more, I think, people are developing more eclectic tastes in the States, for sure. I personally think so. I've seen it. You know, the fact that my friend, who I was telling Andreas, who's Greek, is listening to Peso Pluma and a lot of other things. He knows nothing about Spanish, but he loves Peso Pluma, right? So I think it's really fascinating that we're starting to see that, and the fact that artists now no longer have to meet us in order to succeed in the United States, right? Bad Bunny doesn't sing in English, sings only in Spanish. Back then, Shakira, an artist I respect very much, she had to cross over. She felt like she had to in the past, right? She sang in English and had success. But now she's embracing the fact that she doesn't need to do that anymore. She's back to just singing in Spanish, and she's succeeding in that as well, singing songs that are regional Mexican songs, you know, collaborating with Fuerza Regida and Grupo Frontera and a lot of other artists. So I think that there's just now a point where now the industry is now coming over to these artists. They no longer have to go to them. We're coming to them because I think a lot of people are starting to see, oh, we need them. You know, that just tells you the powerful force that Latin music is in this industry for not just for, you know, when it comes to ticket sales, but especially for venues. When it comes to food and beverage, they tell us that, you know, when they go to a show that's, say, Julián Alvarez probably broke the record for beer sales and tequila sales at SoFi Stadium, right? That's not, we love to drink. and venues are like, oh, we need more of that. So venues love Latin acts because we are ready to consume and embrace artists and also have a good time. We love to have a good time.
Now, you mentioned Shakira for a minute here, and I want to focus on that with the chart metric findings, because you mentioned in the study that there are 3 legendary artists according to what you studied, and one of them is Carlos Vives, the other one's Binomio de Oro, the other one's Grupo Nietzsche. Where's Shakira? Why isn't she in the legendary top?
Legendary has one criteria, meaning you have to be an active artist for 30 years plus.
Okay.
It's like getting into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
30 years plus.
That's
Okay, Shakira could be there.
She's getting there. She's definitely.
I think she's already there.
Yeah.
It's
Pretty much.
It's like saying, does she deserve to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? Yes. In due time. It's coming. So
Okay.
it's happening. That's the only criteria we have for legendary. Out of the 12 million, only 150 artists, give or take, are in the legendary category. So it's very, very small.
Okay, other than the 30 plus years of career, what qualifies you as a legendary artist for Chartmetric?
Great question. So for those of you not familiar with Chartmetric, we collect data sources from multiple DSPs and social media. Spotify, Amazon Music, Instagram, Deezer, you name it. And depending on how many streams you have, how many followers, you kind of get points. So the artist with the most points is the #1 artist in the world right now. So it's legendary artists that have been around for 30 years plus, and they have the most points collectively if you do anything. Is this 100% accurate? No, because for the Beatles, there was no Spotify, there was no TikTok. It was physical sales, vinyl, cassettes, CDs. So we had to kind of play on that to kind of work on the algorithm properly. But it's definitely based on the collective amount of followers, streams, everything else you have, and then the collective points, which is the proprietary Chartmetric ranking, or the score, as we say in our system.
Okay, now I want to ask you about, so you mentioned Movistar Arenas being one of the biggest selling venues in the world right now, according to what you guys have found. And I'd like to ask you, Oscar, what else have you found about our market? What else do you know about the live market other than the Movistar success numbers that you just mentioned?
Well, I think that when it comes to that data specifically, when it comes to, I don't want to just say Movistar. I mean, I think just in general, when you look at Colombia and other parts of South America, I don't want to group them all together neither, because I think every market certainly is different. But when you look at Colombia specifically, I think when it comes to ticket sales, it's remarkable. First of all, it's at a busy arena. That is why it's one of the top selling ones in our charts. But I think what we're seeing is the fact that you guys want to consume a little bit of everything. Like even family shows. Disney on Ice is one of the top shows in Colombia, which is that's remarkable. I applaud that. I think that the fact that the venue operators, I must commend them, because they do offer you variety, and you guys love that variety. And clearly, I mean, you guys aren't just if there's one thing I love about Latinos, on top of loving the ballads, the boleros, and everything, son rockeros. You guys love rock too.
True.
You guys really embrace a little bit of everything. And so I think the fact that I also have to really give credit to whether it be the promoters and everyone behind the scenes, because clearly they're giving you what you want, and that a lot of that has to do with the data that they're seeing from Chartmetric. But again, not everyone succeeds, right? You have to understand that it's not always a home run. Just because someone has 20 million followers on this or say or in this market or in that one, doesn't mean they'll succeed also in Colombia, right? So you certainly have to figure that out, and that is a difficult thing to navigate, in not just this market, but really right now in this industry.
Andreas, what else do you know about us regarding live performances and audiences that you can help us understand about ourselves?
There's, so many fascinating facts, but there was about 300 artists that performed live outside of Colombia last year, about 1,500 shows, which was amazing to see. Collaborations also really work, especially when it comes to Latin music. That's really, really helps. Artists collaborate and kind of build careers. But also, what I'm finding out, artists that had very small numbers just a year ago, now they're in millions, like 20 million, 30 million. So things can move quickly. And because things can move quickly, it's good to be aware what's happening and pick up on it right away. Is there one platform or one metric that does it? No. There's multiple metrics that can have an impact on the success of an artist. Believe it or not, I was looking at an artist once and I knew they're going to be getting a lot of attention. Why? The Wikipedia numbers were spiking. Why Wikipedia? You hear the name of an artist, you're not familiar, you go search on Google, and Wikipedia is the first result, and that's what you click. So somehow that artist was announced in a big festival, developing artists, people don't know them. So once I saw the Wikipedia, I forwarded to the management team, and I said, stop building up the socials. Put some money behind it. They worked on Instagram. So it was Wikipedia, Instagram, did the performance, did very well, and then Spotify picked it up on playlists. Does it work for everyone? No. Because you don't know control who's going to go search on Wikipedia. In other cases, you may have someone on TikTok picking up, an influencer, picking up and supporting the artist. But if you know that and you jump on the moment, you can build on that, and then you can build in other areas. Or very slowly, methodically, you build your Instagram account, and as the numbers grow, then you become successful. It's like January of last year, we started doing posts about Chapel Roan. And then in the summer, she blew up. Yeah, she's not Colombian, but she's an artist that developed.
Did you see that coming?
Well, we saw the numbers in January. And then summer, everyone knew about Chapel.
But when you look at a case like
Yeah.
Chapel Roan,
Yeah.
do you see it climbing? I mean, can you predict what's going to happen?
Prediction is a tricky word. we can see a pattern, and we can say that there's something going on with this artist. And either we do a social media post, or if we see a cluster, we can actually write a whole article. For example, last week we wrote an article about orchestras having a very big impact at Coachella. And we explain the data behind it, and it happens. But the reason I'm using Chapel Roan, like last summer, so many people discovered her, but she's been around for a decade. So she's an artist, she's an overnight success, 10 years in the making, meaning she really put the work to be able to get there. You know what I mean? And,
Yes.
and in some cases, things can happen quickly, or you can build methodically, but once you get the traction, you just have to really, really own the moment, get behind it and support it. It can be a tour, it can be something on social media, it can be a playlist. Just take that opportunity and build on that. That to me is the most important thing now for an artist, to really see where the things are connecting and just take them and run. You can be a radio support, I mean, I've seen artists getting some traction on radio, and then from there building up in other areas as well. You just don't know.
How influential is radio right now? I see that in Colombia, you tracked 32 radio stations.
Yes.
And the airplay streams in 2024 across Colombian stations amounted to 1.9 million airplays.
Yes, that's a lot of airplay.
How crucial, how influential is still radio in the building of those patterns towards success for Colombian artists in Colombia, and how much more superior is it, or much more inferior to what you should be doing in terms of numbers on Spotify, TikTok, and any other platform?
I'm going to give you the political answer.
Okay.
I'm gonna go through
That's not the one I'm looking for, though.
Okay, so social media, it's something that I advocate every artist or their teams to really build. Why? It's a one-to-one relationship with your audience. There is no better way to communicate to your audience.
Gotcha.
Then based on that, you can build on other successes. You can use that to get a playlist on Spotify. You can use it to get on a nice tour. The area with radio, especially in the US, the biggest barrier is the cost. It's not cheap to do a radio campaign in the US. And coming from the music world myself, it could be 6 figures, it could be 7 figures.
It's a lot of money.
And if you take your whole marketing budget, especially developing artists that don't have that much, and they say, I'm just going to put everything at radio. If it doesn't work,
You're
where do you go
broke.
from here? Or let's say, let me build my social media, let me get some playlists on Spotify, let me go do some dates, and once I have traction and I have an audience, I can try radio as well. And there's ways you can test it. You can do one station, you can do a market with a couple stations. And the radio stations want, hits, but they're willing to test a single, and if it doesn't get traction, which you know more than anyone else, they're not going to continue that. But they're always looking for the next hit.
Of course.
And for them, because they don't have many windows to add new singles every week, you play the usual songs that your audience wants to hear, and then you test a few things. You have to say, if I can only test 2 or 3 songs per week at my station, which ones am I going to do? So you're going to look at social media for that artist. You're going to look at their Spotify numbers. So the artist almost has to convince you in some cases as well they should be on the radio station. So it's a two-way relationship. The radio stations are looking for a success developing artists, but they have to know that there's some traction going on in other areas, and then they're willing to test it. So radio maybe should not be the first thing you do, but as you get traction, it's maybe phase 2, phase 3. That's something you should look into.
Okay,
Does this help? Yeah. Sorry, I had to go.
That's the political. Do you have a? Can you share the non-political
Well,
answer to that?
the non-political is no. Don't do radio at the beginning. Build everything else, and then
There
exactly.
you go, guys.
Yeah.
There you go. There you have it.
Yeah.
Well, Oscar.
Space in the room, so you're.
It probably also relies on the market too, though. Some
Yeah.
people,
Absolutely. No, but,
Yeah,
but, but,
totally,
but the fact is, I'm asking this question
Yeah.
because artists in Colombia are so obsessed with getting played on the radio because they think it's actually going to make a difference and it's going to break them nationwide. And those of us who have been in the industry for over 2 decades know that it could happen, but it usually doesn't.
right?
It's like, yes, but no.
Yeah.
Don't focus so much on being on the radio because it may not make a difference. It's not going to break you,
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I'm going to add a couple things, and I'm going to use a similar example as well. If you're a developing artist and not known, if you even get some airplay at radio, people don't know you.
Exactly.
You're not going to get much traction. And I think that's the area. And we did actually a story for Billboard. They came to us, we provided the data, and they said, if an artist gets on a late night TV show, Stephen Colbert, Jimmy Fallon, Jimmy Kimmel, there's quite a few, at least the ones in the US. What's the impact? And the impact was very minimal.
I know.
Especially on developing artists. So you can perform at a show that has 1, 2, 3 million audience, and if you're not known, if you don't have traction in other areas, you're not going to have an impact. So why don't do it when the moment is right? That's what I'm suggesting.
One last thing regarding the chart metric findings of Colombia's music industry, which I found fascinating and I'd like to share with you guys today too, has to do with the audience demographics of Colombian artists, and by this, we're looking into the people listening to those artists.
Correct.
Right?
Yes.
And you guys found that 64.9% of the listeners are female.
Yes.
So we have a largely female-oriented audience.
Yes.
Wow, that's
Congrats on
pretty
that.
powerful.
And I was wondering, what do the guys do? If they don't like, where do is it just sports? Or you just play soccer in the
Listen
field?
to the same old Judas
yeah,
Priest
or
records
exactly.
over and over again, man.
Yeah, but there is a caveat, meaning we use social media platforms, which is very young-oriented. And overall, we found that TikTok is very female-driven compared to, let's say, something like YouTube. So, but 2/3, that's quite a disparity there. But knowing that, and then also knowing that your audience is 18 to 24, which is very young, and then 25 to 34, you kind of tell if you're going to be an artist breaking, where is the audience that's going to help you go to the next level.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I just to add to that, I mean, you don't need chart metric to know that that women really are huge drivers of really almost any economy. They're, as much as men like to think, we have the pants in the house.
Yeah,
They make the business decisions a lot. They're the ones that drive the economy, and we noticed that, in our numbers, and you could see that even in the industry as a whole, when it comes to like Taylor Swift, Beyonce. you know, it's a lot of women going to those concerts, yes, but they're also spending a ton. So through, like, I'm sure you can see the consumer habits, right? What they're spending on, and, you know, what are they watching on, say, Instagram, and maybe clicking on afterwards to see what they want to buy when it comes to merchandise or anything, right? So, you know, I can tell you this much: whenever I go to a show with my wife, first thing she wants to do is already buy merch, you know, or whatever. Yeah. So every single time, like, I got to get that shirt. And so women are the ones that spend. And we are seeing that, we've noticed that. And they really do have, again, guys certainly have an influence as well. There's no doubt about that. But if you were to look at the spending power of women, especially in the United States that we've seen, they would be one of probably the top economies out there, no doubt about it.
Massive. Bueno, pues para cerrar aquí rápidamente en términos de conciertos, Juanes es el número 1 en términos de live events, de conciertos que se producen en otras partes del mundo. Chartmetric registró 1.400 eventos en vivo con 296 artistas colombianos. Encontró que Juanes ocupa el primer lugar en términos de gira, seguido por el grupo Nietzsche. Fate está tercero, Karol G está cuarto y los Aterciopelados ocupan el quinto lugar. Andreas Katsambas, Oscar Areliz, thank you very much for being here at BIME. It's been a pleasure. Muchísimas gracias a nuestros panelistas, a ustedes por la atención. Thank you. ¿Tenemos preguntas?
Questions? No?
Got any questions?
We got it all.
And
Figured out?
big thank you to Alejandro for a great job moderating.
Okay, great job. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you. Muchísimas gracias.
Awesome. Oh, 5
5
minutes.
minutos de preguntas por si tienen alguna inquietud o alguna
Ahí hay una pregunta.
Ya Lucho tiene una.
Esa cifra que leyó ahorita de top 5 artistas colombianos, ¿eso se refiere al número de conciertos o a tickets vendidos?
Número de conciertos.
¿Y existe?
Número de fechas que estos artistas estuvieron. He's asking about the last number that I mentioned regarding the study and the research, which mentions 61 live events for Juanes, 40 live events for Grupo Nietzsche, 40 for Fade, 39 for Karol G, and 38 for Aterciopelados.
No, it's great. I mean, if there's one thing I could add to whatever I've said already about the Colombian market, and I think this kind of applies to other South American markets, what I think it's great that you guys really support, you know, people, your gente, tu gente, and it's wonderful. But I think what's limiting maybe this culture or this market and others in South America is infrastructure. You know, like the reason why Juanes and all these artists, Karol G's, love to go out to the United States and everything. It's the higher grosses. There's no doubt about that. But it's also the fact that they can go to so many different venues, right? So infrastructure is something that I know, you know, talking to people here in South America, they're aware of that. And the government certainly has certain restrictions when it comes to that. But we're going to hopefully start to see more and more investors come into this country and others in South America as well to really help boom the economy, because as I mentioned before, we've seen it. We've seen it with Bogotá. We've seen the influence that you guys are having on not just you know, within your own country, but really the entire industry. You know, it's Live Nations of the world and even all the small promoters, they're noticing. That's why they use this word of globalization, you know, all the time. You know, it's because they want to come out here. They want to bring out here all the Anglo artists want to come out here as well. And so once we start seeing more arenas pop up, you have plenty of stadiums. Encantan el fútbol, ¿verdad? That's true. But you guys certainly need more closed spaces where artists can certainly thrive, and artists of all kinds, not just arenas, but even clubs, theaters. Hopefully we will see that more over the next decade, I think, for sure.
Acá adelante y allá atrás.
Thank you very much. One of the things that you were saying is how like the U.S. politics are changing a bit, but how much the music business, specifically in the Latin music, has benefited from the diaspora of Latinos in the U.S. So now that the policies are changing, where is this diaspora going? Do you have like a country that you think that is gonna start having this type of influence like the Latinos in the U.S. used to do?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because we're still learning a lot about that, right? Like, we're still learning about everything that's going on, how that's going to affect us in the States or even Latin artists in the States as well. But, you need to, not to say that this is, but artists say like a Bad Bunny, they set the template for a bunch of other artists. Like if it wasn't for Bad Bunny, there wouldn't have, I'm not saying there wouldn't have, there was a Taylor Swift, but he set that roadmap for her to be amazing in stadiums. Bad Bunny did it first. He broke a record the year before with over $400 million in grosses. It's insane. And he did it as a Latin artist, not singing a lick of English at all. That really is remarkable to do that in the United States. And now he's doing it, he just announced that he's going on he's hitting Australia. He's hitting Europe. So we're gonna see this, and he's even hitting Tokyo. So we're going to start to see this globalization more of Latin artists maybe being a little more bold. All it takes is for an artist to take that step, and then others will follow as well. The Bad Bunny did it, and he's doing it again. Karol G did it with her remarkable tour as well. Other artists, no matter what their size, you don't have to be a Karol G. There's plenty of artists, Latin artists that are, Karim Leon was playing little theaters in Amsterdam, right? Like it's there. It's happening. People are there. And I think, I know from the people I've spoken to, they are certainly starting to route those areas a lot more for Latin artists because they certainly see growth and potential there as well.
So we were talking about vallenato and radio, and you guys were saying that radio is not one of the things that artists should be doing right now. But then we got maybe, I don't know, like Binomio de Oro or Grupo Nietzsche, which are two of the three legendary artists that we have in Chartmetric. Those artists, most of their earnings are from live shows, and those live shows are in small towns around Colombia. In those small towns, most of the people don't have Spotify or access to YouTube, where they listen only to radio. So what do you guys think about doing radio in these genres where Spotify or YouTube don't have any range?
Yeah, it's a great question. Just to be clear, I don't suggest to use radio as your main source of building an artist. Like, say, if you have limited resources and you're a developing artist that's not known yet, just don't believe radio is going to make the big difference. But radio is instrumental in developing artists to the next level. You cannot get on the level of artists top in the world without radio support eventually. So small markets, radio is very crucial, especially in the US that we have something called college radio, meaning college campuses have their own radio stations. And if you are one of the small genres that don't get support on the mainstream, that's the best way to get exposure right away. And I highly recommend that. But I believe maybe we're talking about mainstream radio,
right,
and putting money behind it. And it's like if you're starting now and you don't have the following, and you're not out touring, meaning you don't have the audience to sell tickets yet, don't rely on radio to make that.
Yeah, and also I think that if you're a local talent in a province in Colombia, you're probably, first of all, take a look at someone like Luis Alfonso. Luis Alfonso started his career doing what the majority of those artists usually do. They do the fairs, hacen las ferias, los festivales, las verbenas, las fiestas locales, and they get known as a live act first. And then they start moving up the ladder into radio, community radio, then they do regional radio, and then they do mainstream radio. In the case of Luis Alfonso is probably the biggest artist in Colombia right now. Luis Alfonso tiene la proyección más grande de la música popular en Colombia en estos momentos, y antes de hacer eso hizo las verbenas, las fiestas, y después hizo YouTube. Y después hizo radio. Porque él sabía muy bien, no importa que el alcance, usted dice que la gente no tiene Spotify en Chinchiná, o en Armenia, o en Aguadas, pero tienen YouTube. Y llegan más rápido con un artista con YouTube que con la radio. ¿Por qué? Porque, como decía Andreas también, la radio está enfocada en sacar adelante su negocito de cuñitas. Y las cuñitas se pagan cuando usted pone los totes que le gustan a la gente. You know what I mean? That's pretty much what it's all about when it comes to radio. So yeah, Andreas, you know, like the political answer was pretty, como que cubría todo, and the non-political one is like, no, don't spend your money on radio because it doesn't get you anywhere fast. Radio is like the cherry on the top.
Yeah, sure.
If you look at big markets like LA, New York, you know, you'll notice that, yeah, artists just put that little cherry on top once they make it, you know, Benson Boone and, you know, those big honchos, Chappell Roan. But before that, they do the heavy lifting, which is getting the audience, you know, getting them, y que te vean, ¿no?
Hedge your bets, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you, guys. Oscar, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Andreas,
This was amazing.
great knowing you.
you.
All right, thank you very much.
Really.
Ministerio TIC,